citations, and here's my live audience. Hello, my name is Jonathan Carrillo, and I am in speech 1311. If we ever forget that we are one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under. Ronald Reagan. Today, I will be informing you about the 40th President of the United States and the great communicator, Ronald Reagan. This speech will be focused on three things: Ronald Reagan's early life before his presidency, secondly, his most notable accomplishments during his presidency, and third, how those policies and actions directly affected people of color and those of lower socioeconomic status. Who was Ronald Reagan? As the White House has a publication now on every single president, his introduction reads as follows. On February 6, 1911, Ronald Wilson Reagan was born to Nellie and John Reagan in Tampico, Illinois. He attended high school in nearby Dixon and then worked his way through Eureka College. There, he studied economics and sociology, played on the football team, and acted in school plays. Upon graduation, he became a rodeo sports announcer. A screen test in 1937 won him a contract in Hollywood. During the next 2 decades, he appeared in 53 films. One of those films in particular really caught my eye. It's called Bedtime for Bonzo, and it portrays Ronald Reagan as a scientist and father to a monkey. It's crazy, right? This background in acting really helped enhance his view in the voters' eyes and helped him be a more charismatic and joyful presidential nominee, as opposed to his opposition, Jimmy Carter, which voters viewed as condescending and controlling. Now let's discuss his political accomplishments. Ronald Reagan was all about freedom. He believed that he could accomplish economic prosperity through deregulation of industry and the environment. Most notably, he believed in lowering taxes, which he did many times. In 1981, he pushed Congress to drop the top tax rate from 70% down to 50%. Then, Congress lowered the tax rate down from 50% down to 28% with the Tax Reform Act of 1986. Reagan also had a foreign policy notion of peace through strength. By this, he meant that he would increase military spending by about 35% and spend more than Carter, Ford, and Nixon combined. This egregious amount of military spending is what some people use to support the claim that Ronald Reagan won us the Cold War by bankrupting the Soviet Union in its attempt to compete with us. Spoken by John Green in the Reagan Revolution crash course, Reagan also pressured NATO to put missiles in Western Europe, and the war games that NATO staged in 1983 were so realistic that the Soviets almost scrambled their planes and launched their ICBMs. Reagan's aggressive nuclear posture had a couple of positive results. First, it boosted the worldwide anti-nuclear weapons movement called the Freeze Movement. Second, it turned Reagan into the most successful nuclear abolitionist of the atomic age. Finally, Reagan also held a conversation with Mikhail Gorbachev, which ended in the elimination of intermediate nuclear range missiles. Ronald Reagan also elected the first woman Supreme Court Justice, Sandra Day O'Connor. Finally, I will inform you on how his policies directly negatively impacted people of color and those of lower socioeconomic status. His revolutionary tax policies from the 1980s allowed the top 1% to control 40% of the nation's wealth. Reagan also created the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986, which provided to us by the University of Michigan. This legislation, the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986, became law a month later, increasing penalties for drug possession, creating minimum sentences for drug-related offenses, and increasing funds for drug enforcement measures, and importantly resulted in the creation of a disparity of 100 to 1 for crimes related to crack cocaine versus powdered cocaine. This meant that if you were caught with 50 grams of crack cocaine, you would be sentenced to 10 years in prison. Whereas if you wanted to receive that same conviction, you would have to have 5,000 grams of powdered cocaine. Now, the reason that this disparity in the law exists is because they used false claims that crack cocaine was more addictive and more dangerous than powdered cocaine. When in reality, the only statistics that they had were that crack cocaine was used more by people of color and those of lower socioeconomic status, whereas powdered cocaine was used by white and more affluent people. The 1984 Comprehensive Crime Act created mandatory minimum sentencing. In summary, I gave you 3 perspectives of the Ronald Reagan where I informed you about his life before he was president, his most notable accomplishments while he was president, and lastly, I provided you with the tribulations he left for people of color. Ronald Reagan's legacy as the great communicator will be what the children of our next generation will be taught in school, and I can only hope that they will also learn about his influence on the war on drugs and mass incarceration in this country. Thank you.